Hi, everybody. It's been a while since I posted, so I figured I would just give you some updates on some things that I've been working on, talk about some things that have been working for me, some changes in routine, and hopefully any of this or some of it helps you guys that are dealing with different situations. Some of it's applicable across the board. Some of it's a little bit more unique, but I've gotten a lot of really good feedback in some of the comments. I want to try to address some of the things that people mentioned and just, again, like just offer as much info and help as I possibly can in one of these quick videos. So first thing is I'm still using the same medications. I'm still using OmniPod 5, Dexcom 6, and Humalog. I'm just looking at some notes that I took over here so I don't ramble all over the place, but taking about the same amount of insulin. So I haven't made too many changes to my settings. I'm going to show my glucose in a few minutes that shows some of my average numbers, but for the most part, all the medications are sort of still on track. In fact, why don't I show Gluco right now? So Gluco, again, is just that app that your doctor likely has access to if you use the Omnipod, and it allows you all to share your data with your doctor. So I'll show you mine. All right, so you should be able to see my Gluco window right now. And so this is just from the last week or a little bit more, but you can see sort of the averages of where I'm at. Average is 127. Deviation is 25, so that's pretty good. I've been up a little bit higher, but I'll get into why, and I've been down a little bit lower, and I'll get into why that is as well. So again, you can sort of just see that I'm always in automated mode. I definitely recommend this strongly for anybody that's on the Omnipod. I've had some friends recently who use manual mode, and they've had just a much tougher time managing things. And although they're happy with it, like I would definitely recommend for anybody that's not already using automated mode, I would strongly suggest you give it a try. It might not be great at first. There is a learning curve with the system, and it's going to be a little bit safe before it kind of gets going. But once it really gets to know you, I find it to be quite helpful. Now, related to some of the highs and lows, you'll also see that I'm eating quite a bit of carbs a day, probably between 250 and 350 a day, with also a ton of protein. But I am exercising and being very physically active, so I kind of need it. But regarding some of the, you can see here that there's some highs and there's some lows. The highs are somewhat intentional. And so it relates to my exercise pattern. So I've been doing, previously I did just traditional weight training at the gym, and I was getting a little bit stale and I wasn't really motivated to do it. So I tried one of those, or I've been trying F45, which is like a HIIT training, like high intensity interval training. So it's a much faster paced sort of a training that I'm used to. And it's also a class format. So I don't necessarily have immediate access to my glucose tablets and just sugar if I need it, because I'm sort of involved in the class. I bring all that stuff with me and I have it in the locker. But since I know that the class is so intense, my blood sugar does tend to tank during the course if I don't take a ton of sugar beforehand. So oftentimes what I'm doing is I'm taking a lot of sugar before the workout starts. And most of the time it actually works out perfectly, because in many cases I take the F45 in the morning. So 6:30, and I get up about an hour before. And usually when I wake up, my blood sugar is at about 115, 120, which is great. And on my way to the class, I like to take my sugar at that point. So it's trending up pretty aggressively by the time the course starts. And perfect world for me, I'm in like the 160 range while I'm working out. It stays there. And then when I finish the course, it ends. What happens sometimes is the F45 class may not be as intense as the one in the previous day. So if there's less of a cardio component and it's a slower pace workout, if I take a ton of sugar, I'm likely not going to burn as much off, and therefore I'll go pretty high and it'll come down a little bit slower. And that's where some of these higher numbers are. So this is not an out of control number. This is me sort of artificially raising my blood sugar so that I'm in a safe range for exercise. It's just a matter of dialing in just how much sugar I need before that workout. And so the point of the story is, for anybody that's trying to do something similar, is see if you can understand a pattern in terms of what your blood sugar is doing against what kind of exercise you're doing. Like I said, it's a little tricky sometimes in a group fitness class, because you don't exactly know what you're going to do before it starts. And so if you're always aggressive, but then you don't have such an intense workout, you're going to be a little bit high. But for me, I personally would rather be a little bit high than a little bit low. And so This is just where I think I would recommend people just play with it. You know, you always want to take sugar before you're going to do a workout like this, but how much, the timing of it is something that you want to tweak and try different things about. So yeah, I would encourage anybody to play with this. And again, let me know in the comments if you're having trouble with this. We can try to brainstorm it. Now, the lowest is actually also related to the exercise because I've been exercising so hard that a lot of times I am not putting myself into activity mode with my Omnipod. And so I'm working out really hard. I'm taking a ton of sugar. It sees my blood sugar spiking at the beginning of the course. And then it's trying to automatically correct that blood sugar, but I'm also exercising like a maniac. So sometimes when I get out of the class, I absolutely tank. And that's where some of these lows are coming from. And so again, that this works for me just because I kind of like to have the automated mode giving me a little bit of insulin, even if I'm exercising, just because I don't want to actually be in this 220 to 230 range. I feel like I just don't feel as great there. So I'm okay with it correcting. But if anybody was struggling with a ton of lows after the workout and they were leaving their Omnipod in automated mode while they were exercising, I would encourage you to maybe then try exercise mode or activity mode, because then it's not going to at least correct. As an example, there's many times that I walk into a workout class with like 0.5 active units on board. And because of the way that I'm spiking my blood sugar and it's seeing that number increase despite the exercise, which it doesn't know I'm doing, I could walk out of the class with 2 units on board because it's really trying to correct me aggressively. And so you think about it, you got 2 units on board, plus you've exercised. It's pretty natural that you're going to come down very fast. And so if anybody's struggling with this, again, either correct after the workout, take more blood sugar, take more sugar if you are starting to tank, or don't consider maybe trying to use activity mode and don't just leave it in automated like I do. But it is working. Related to that, I'm also another physical thing that I'm doing is I'm becoming a volunteer firefighter. So my town has a volunteer firefighting department and I am joining it. And so I've been going to every week we have training sessions where we do drills and all sorts of practice for real fires. And I get called to fires and I go, and I have sort of a modified role right now as I go into training, but I'm starting a thing called fire school this Sunday actually. And it's pretty intense and I'm kind of nervous about it, but I have spoken to the instructors and I've told them about the diabetes and they're aware of it. They said other people do it. And so there's just a lot there's a lot of planning that goes into it that I'm going to be doing. It's kind of such a niche thing that I won't bother getting into it too deeply here. But the point is, if you have type 1, you can do these kind of things. I know it's going to be a little bit more of a challenge for me than it would be for somebody that doesn't have diabetes, but we can do it. I think the same applies to lots of sports. And so if this is an area that anybody's interested in learning about more, whether it's for firefighting or, I don't know, any other sort of emergency service or just high intensity thing in general, I'd be happy to get more into it and talk about some of the things that I'm going to be focusing on and making sure that I have backups of and just what my plan is and also how it goes because I haven't started it yet. So that's going to be starting this Sunday. So I'll get more into that another time. Another thing, I'm going to just share my screen again. For anybody that works on again, at home or has access to a computer while they work, there is an app called Sugar Mate. So this app called Sugar Mate, I'm on a Mac right now. Just another way to track your blood sugar. So if you see up here, after I turned on this application, Sugar Mate is an app that actually just stays in my top panel here. So I can look at my blood sugar and the change over time throughout the day. So I know I have my watch and all that kind of stuff next to me, but sometimes when you're in a meeting and it looks bad if you're distracted or you just want to have another way to view it, SugarMate is a very helpful app that I find beneficial. Another sort of information piece that has been incredibly helpful for me, and it's not a plug, I'm in no way affiliated with them, but one of the education groups that I got connected with when I first got diagnosed with type 1 that has been unbelievably helpful, it's called Integrated Diabetes. So I heard about this I listened to that Juicebox podcast a lot. And they have this is a company built of diabetes educators that really offers specifically type 1 education information. And I heard about them from the podcast and I reached out to them myself. And what I did at the time, this is, I guess, when I first got diagnosed, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, is you can hire them on like what's called like a retainer basis. So you can give them a flat fee. I think it was like $500. And then you get access to them for like once or twice a week over the course of several weeks or months. And so you meet with them, they go over your initial settings, they give you suggestions about things that you could change or optimize on your own. And then you make them. And then you meet progressively and you look at your graphs together and they see what you're doing and how you're getting along. And if you're making improvements or if there's things that you feel comfortable with. And I just can't emphasize how helpful this group has been for me. And the only reason I'm talking about it now is because I have a friend actually that I've been working with, trying to give her some initial advice. And she was struggling and she actually reached out to this group yesterday and she had an incredible experience and she feels much more confident. And so, yeah, these YouTube videos are great, but if you want individual attention and guidance from qualified experts, like I'm not a qualified expert, I'm just a person that has it, but these are actual certified educators that are not really affiliated with any doctor. And I know a lot of people are unhappy or unsatisfied with their doctor and or their diabetes educator through their doctor. And so this is an independent service. You can do it all on Zoom. Again, I have no affiliation with them. I just found it so helpful that I think everybody who has type 1 should know about it. And if they're in any way struggling, I would absolutely reach out to these people. So those are some of the bigger things. The only thing I was going to talk about, and I can get into this more in detail in future ones, but just my own diet. I eat, like I said, I eat a lot of carbs. I eat a lot in general, and I have, pretty good blood sugar. I'm in the 95% plus in range, time in range window for most of the time. And I guess I'll just briefly go over a typical day and sort of how I'm dosing my insulin and what I do for corrections and things. So first thing is, like I said, I work out at about 6:30 in the morning most days. And I usually have like a protein bar. So I have like a Quest bar, which is it's a low carb protein bar. I just like to have something in my stomach when I exercise, mostly because I'm starving when I wake up. And so in my case, I don't dose for the full amount because I eat it on my way to the gym. And so it's like I think it's like 15 or 20 carbs, but there's a lot of fiber in there. So I generally just dose like 10 grams for 10 grams of carbs on that first snack on the way to the gym. Wind up with maybe 0.75 or 1 unit of insulin for that meal. And if I wasn't exercising, I would go high from that, but it gives me a little bit of insulin in my system, which is good. And it gives me a not growling stomach, which is great. And so I work out really hard from about 6:30 to 7:30. And then I get home, I take a shower. Now this is important. I don't eat right away because for me, my blood sugar is a little bit on a roller coaster after I work out because as I talked about before, it's like I've spiked it intentionally before the workout and then I've worked out and now it's coming down. I want to give it time to level off because I also take a shower when I get home. And I find that, the shower can also do a number on blood sugar. It'll bring it up at first and then it also crashes afterwards. So I tend to give it maybe 20 or 30 minutes after I shower and get dressed to actually prepare breakfast because I just don't want to dose when I'm either going down too fast because it's not going to give me enough or when I'm going up and it's going to give me too much. Because after I exercise, I do find that I'm much more sensitive to insulin. So I can take quite a bit less than I would if I had just woken up and eaten a straight up breakfast. So I think that's an important consideration for anybody that's doing that as part of their routine. Lately, my breakfast has been pretty high carb. So I have, most of the time what I have is like a smoothie with like bananas and strawberries and protein bar or protein powder, like 2 scoops of vanilla protein powder, some peanut butter, maybe some chia seeds and some almond milk. And then I also generally have like 2 pieces of Ezekiel bread, which is grain-free bread, which is great. I'd get much less of a spike from that, but I'll have the 2 pieces of Ezekiel bread with some peanut butter and some honey. So I end up dosing like, it is like a 65 to a 70 gram carb breakfast that I'm having. Like I said, though, since I've worked out, I often don't dose for the full amount because I know I'm sensitive. And plus my ratios are typically strong in the morning because they're based on how I would react or what kind of insulin I would need if I was not exercising. And so I generally dose like 55 grams of carbs, even though it's like a 70 gram breakfast. And I have a good reaction to it. I like to eat, when I'm around, I like to start the meal when I'm around like 120, and that's typically when I'll give my insulin. And so, I generally will see it go up to 150, 160, just briefly, and then it'll come back down to where it was. I've had a great experience with that. Now, for me, what I tend to do then is wait a couple of hours and have a relatively low carb snack. Like I'll have some pistachios most of the time, or some other sort of like nut, maybe another protein bar, but that would be a typical like midday snack for me. Lunch, I tend to eat also high carb. Lately, I've been doing like chickpeas, lentils, chopped up vegetables, baked potato, some more nuts, maybe some carrots, like just tons of vegetables, and also trying to get a decent amount of protein through the lentils and the chickpeas. And if I need it, I'll have just more nuts for more protein. But that's another high carb meal. I think I would generally do about 65 to 70 grams of carbs there. And what I do that a lot of people probably wouldn't do, and I'm just lucky to have the ability to do this, is that if I get a spike after lunch, I'm not immediately going to correct with insulin. I'm oftentimes going to go for a walk or do some squats or do some exercise. I definitely tend to use exercise to stop a high or a skyrocketing blood sugar quite a bit, because in my experience, if I see an arrow that's going up diagonal or straight up, adding more insulin is not going to fix it in the short term. It's just going to maybe, once it gets higher, it's going to bring it down a little bit better. But if I see a skyrocketing blood sugar and I get up and I do a walk, even if it's just like half a mile, or if I do 50 squats, or if I do some jumping jacks or some push-ups, 99% of the time, by the next reading or the next reading or two, that straight up and down arrow is now level and I'm in good shape. And so I can't stress this enough. Like, I don't think it really matters how in shape you are or how much muscle you have or anything. Like the simple fact of like the science of moving and getting your body to suck up the glucose that's in your bloodstream, it's unbelievably effective. And the bigger the muscles, the more effective it's going to be at sucking up that glucose, which is why things like walking and squats, because you're using your butt and your quads and your legs, as opposed to, a biceps curl, even though that's good too. But for anybody that's seeing just these crazy spikes, especially if they're not every time, if it's every time, you want to just adjust your ratios or take more insulin. But if you're seeing like intermittent crazy spikes after a meal, I'm telling you, just do like 5 or 10 minutes of exercise. It's unbelievable how well it works at stopping that spike. And then, once the spike is stopped, you're fighting much less of a rise. And so you need much less insulin and you can stay at a really nice level. And so almost every day I do that. Moving on to like a midday snack or like a 4 or 5 o'clock at night snack, I tend to have a bowl of oatmeal with more protein, some peanut butter, and maybe some more fruit, some frozen fruit. Another, high carb. Like I really do eat a lot of carbs because I burn a ton of calories and I'm quite active. So that would be another 65 to 70 gram meal bolus. And oatmeal can hit me pretty hard. It's weird. Oatmeal's weird. Some days I'll have no spike. Other days it'll go up incredibly fast. Now, if you don't know this already, what you should know is that the things that you add to oatmeal can dramatically impact how fast the blood sugar spikes or not. So if you're eating straight up oatmeal, so straight carbs without any fats or protein, it's going to digest much quicker than it would if you add things like peanut butter or protein powder. And so if you're eating just straight up oatmeal, you're probably going to see a pretty quick blood sugar spike. If you're adding those other things, you might see a much slower spike, or you might see no spike and then it goes up a couple of hours later. So just keep an eye out for those things if that's something that you choose to eat. And again, for me, I would tend to use exercise again to fix those quickly. But I mean, I'm going to start correcting because I want to get into a good space for dinner, and then I don't generally want a huge spike before dinner because I want it to come back down and be nice and smooth as I prepare for bed. Lately, dinner for me has been I've been getting these vegetarian what are they called? The little fried things. They're like egg rolls, but they're not really egg rolls. I can't think of the name, but they're these healthy what are they called? I don't know. But they're carb, or they're vegetarian based. They're healthy. There's like a mixture of beans and lentils and rice and all sorts of stuff in there. And I generally would have that with a salad. And again, it's like another 55 to 60 gram meal. I tend to not have too many spikes in the evening. And of course, I'll have snacks and stuff too, but that would be like dinner. Maybe I'll have like some dark chocolate chips with that as like a dessert, or even some yogurt with some fruit in or something like that. But yeah, that would kind of be my day. And again, like I try to eat dinner at about 7 or 8, and I go to bed at around 11. I like to go to bed with as little insulin in my system as possible. And I like to go to bed with as much time before bed as I can at a flat line. If my blood sugar is climbing before bed, I will actually do squats or exercise to stop it and to get it leveled off. Not if I have a ton of insulin in my system, because I don't want to go low, but I don't want it climbing, because when I go to sleep, if there's anything going on with my blood sugar, I find that it just moonballs up into like the 180s, 190s range, and it just stays there overnight. And then I'm a little bit annoyed because I've used a ton of insulin by the next day, and I've been out of range all night. So it's really, really important to get into a good place before bed so that you can have a smooth overnight line. Because if you think about it, you're spending 6 or 8 or 9 hours in range overnight when you're sleeping. If you think about your A1C is just an average of your blood sugar. And so even if your blood sugars are crazy during the day when you're awake because you're stressed or you're eating too much or whatever the case may be, if you can at least get good time in range overnight, you are dramatically helping your A1C, which is just the best thing that you could do for your body. So I can't emphasize enough how important it is to get yourself into a good place before dinner or before bed. For some people, that actually might be eating less carbs before bed because you just have to take less insulin. But just be aware you could get a rise from the protein. But there's so much more to talk about all this. This is just kind of a quick overview of like what I do in a day. I can always maybe create a different sort of video format where I actually show the things that I'm eating. The problem is I'm not that great with YouTube, so I don't know how to edit or any of that stuff, but I could figure it out. But okay, those are the main points that I wanted to talk about. And like I said, we can talk about any questions that you have, just put them in the chat and I can try to help as much as possible. But hope everybody's doing good and I'll talk to you all soon.